Late into 1988, Orel Hershiser was in a tight race for the Cy Young, but he broke away when he set one of the most unbreakable records in baseball by pitching 59 straight scoreless innings to end the season, with a stretch that continued into the playoffs. So let's look at how that historic stretch came to be.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Orel Hershiser was drafted in the 17th round by the Dodgers in 1979 out of Bowling Green, and after nearly quitting in Double-A after giving up 20 runs in 7 innings during a road trip as a reliever and almost being traded to the Rangers, he impressed in spring training of 1983, and by the end of the year, he made his debut. Beginning his career as a reliever, he didn't become a starter until the midpoint of 1984, and he made sure to stay in the rotation by giving a preview of things to come by throwing 4 shutouts in the month of July, which would give him a tie for the most at the end of the season. And 1985 would be his breakthrough year. He finished the season with the best winning percentage in the league with a 19-3 record, along with a 2.03 ERA in 239.2 innings. And without insane seasons by John Tudor and Dwight Gooden, he could have got his first Cy Young. He regressed in 1986, but he made his first All-Star team in 1987, as he cemented himself as a workhorse, pitching the most innings in the league at 264.2, with a 3.06 ERA and a 6.4 WAR, for another top 5 finish in Cy Young voting, in which you could make a real case for him, and one of the least deserving winners in Steve Bedrosian, and that led him into the year that turned him into an absolute star. It didn't actually start out good, as a week before pitchers and catchers reported, it was discovered that he needed an emergency appendectomy. The team wanted to hold him back in spring training, but they let him go through his normal routine after he felt fine during day 1. And despite the limited time to get in shape, he started the year strong, winning all 5 games he pitched in April with a 1.56 ERA in 40 innings, as he was named the pitcher of the month. He would make the All-Star team for the second straight year, and he pitched a 1-2-3 inning in his appearance. But he had a rough patch after the All-Star game. In his 8 starts after, he went 3-4 with a 4.76 ERA, putting his ERA at 3.06 after it was at 2.46. And in his 8th start, he lasted just 2 innings, giving up 8 runs, with 5 of those being earned runs. But after that disastrous start, everything changed, because he wouldn't pitch another game where he didn't last at least 9 innings. His start after the 2-inning start was a complete game shutout on August 19th, and he followed that with another complete game, giving up 2 runs and actually taking the loss. And his start on the 30th saw him give up 2 runs over 9 innings and a victory over the Expos. And those 2 runs came in the 5th, when Tim Raines and Dave Martinez both drove in runs, and after getting out of the inning with no more runs given up, and not giving up another run in the last 4 innings, this is where the streak began. His next start was scheduled for September 4th, but a rainout delayed the game, and that may be the reason the streak even happened in the first place, as he was supposed to go against the best team in the National League in the New York Mets. He may have thrown a shutout anyway, but we'll never know. Either way, he would instead go against the last place Braves, who are 42 games under 500 on September 5th, and this is really where the dominance started. He gave up 4 hits and a walk in the early innings, but after that walk with 2 outs in the 3rd, he would not allow another base runner, finishing the game with his 19th win and 8 strikeouts, and most notably, 4 of those were by 2-time MVP Dale Murphy. In the 2,180 games Murphy played, that was the only time he struck out 4 times. So after an embarrassing 2-inning start a few weeks prior, Hershiser was 3-1 with a 1 ERA since, and he was only getting better. With the Dodgers 4 games up in the division, his next start was against the 74-66 Reds, and what this game showcased was his ability to get out of jams with the numerous close calls throughout the streak. In the 3rd, with 2 outs, he struck out Eric Davis with the bases loaded. Davis also hit into 2 double plays, and another close call came in the 7th, when with runners on the corners and 1 out, he got Ken Griffey Sr. and Barry Larkin out to keep them off the board, and he continued his streak for the rest of the game, as he would go on to win 5-0, with the Reds recording 7 hits and no runs, putting the streak at 23 innings, and also giving him his 20th win, becoming the first Dodger right-handed to record 20 wins since Don Sutton in 1976. And this was important, as the previous night, he watched Danny Jackson pick up win number 21 over the Dodgers, with his ERA 0.2 points lower than Hershiser to that point. The Dodgers continued to build their lead in the NL West between starts, and it could only grow as he took the mound against the Braves again. He was pitching on just 3 days rest, as Tommy Lasorda moved him up, so he could face the second-place Astros in the coming week. And again, Hershiser bared down and escaped numerous times. The 3rd started with back-to-back singles by the Braves, and Hershiser responded with 2 strikeouts and a flyout. Then in the 7th, Andres Thomas hit a double, followed by an error putting runners on the corners with 1 out. But he would get the next 2, including Ron Gant's long fly ball to left that would be caught at the warning track. He pitched for the 9th scoreless, but the problem was, the Dodgers had still not scored a run. But in the bottom of the 9th, Mike Marshall would hit a walk-off double to score Kirk Gibson to give him his 5th win over the Braves that season, put the streak at 31, and a game Hershiser called his worst of the streak, saying, "I was really inconsistent. I didn't have good stuff or location, I couldn't establish a pattern, and I had to work hard adjusting, and I got away with pitches I wouldn't have if I was going badly. but it was a testament to his ability to get out of jams, with 13 hits given up in his last 2 starts, with no runs. And this was really the first time the streak began to be mentioned, though much of the attention was still on the Cy Young race between him and Jackson. And 4 days after the birth of his son, Hershiser took the mound against the Astros in what would be Nolan Ryan's last start with the Astros, who are now 9 games behind the Dodgers. Hershiser was better here, but he still had some scares that weren't his fault. In the first, Kevin Bass hit a single, then he stole second and got to third after an error, but a ground out ended the inning. In the fifth, an error by Alfredo Griffin put runners on the corners with 2 outs, but a deep fly ball would end the threat. And just 1 base runner reached after that, as the Dodgers gave him just 1 run of support, but it was enough as he won his second straight 1-0 game to put the streak at 40 innings, and people would begin to notice, as the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, and LA Times made note of it. While looking at what was ahead, the current record was set by Don Drysdale in 1968, which lasted 58.2 innings, and with Hershiser set for 2 more starts, the only way he could break that season was 2 complete games, with 1 extra inning game in which he was still going. In order for the pitching staff to be ready for the playoffs, with the division basically wrapped up, Hershiser would start on 3 days rest against the Giants. And prior to the game, Seymour Siwat, the official statistician of MLB, announced that the official method for counting consecutive scoreless innings would count only for whole innings. And if Hershiser was to extend the streak into 1989, it would have an asterisk. Either way, in the third, it looked like the streak was coming to an end when the Giants opened with 2 straight singles and a force out to put runners on the corners. Ernie Riles then hit a ground ball, and Brett Butler would interfere with Alfredo Griffin, causing a bad throw. A run was posted on the scoreboard, but after conversation, umpires ruled that Butler interfered, therefore making it a double play. Sources said Butler's slide caused Griffin to throw over the head of Tracy Woodson, and others said he interfered with Steve Sax's relay throw. A little bit of controversy, with Don Drysdale having one of his own during his streak, as with the bases loaded, he hit Dick Dietz, but umpires didn't let him take his base, as they ruled he failed to avoid being hit, both possibly not being called without the streak, and also both being against the Giants. And the call became more noteworthy, as aside from a 7th inning that saw 2 runners get on, Hershiser cruised, the Dodgers' 3 runs in the 8th being the difference in the game, as the streak was now at 49, putting him at 4th all-time including the dead ball era, passing numerous Hall of Famers in that game, including Bob Gibson's 47 innings in 1968, which was the same year Drysdale had his own streak. And that left one last game on the 28th, with the division officially clinched. Hershiser was announced as the Game 1 starter, but all the focus was on this one for now. Not only was he going for history, he was also going for the most wins, as Jackson and Frank Viola had tied him, wins being an important stat in the time, though Hershiser really had the award locked up already. Despite the stakes, the game was not broadcast on local television, with the Summer Olympics, NFL, and the race in the American League East taking some of the coverage away. But many were still interested, including the Padres, who absolutely wanted to put an end to that streak, especially 1 year after Hershiser ended Benito Santiago's 34-game hit streak, which was a rookie record, a record for catchers, and a record for the franchise. Tony Gwynn acknowledged how badly they wanted to put a run on the board, but he also mentioned that they were trying a little too hard, and it showed. Unlike some of his previous starts, he didn't face many jams. There were a couple of hits, but no one reached second to the first 9 innings, and one of those hits came from Roberto Alomar in the 8th with 2 outs. And after throwing 1 pitch, he picked off Alomar, and he was 1 inning away from tying the record. And when he went out to the mound for the 9th, the streak and the game were on the line, as the Dodgers had still not put a run on the board, with Andy Hawkins also putting up zeros. And the bottom of the 9th was easy as ever. 8 pitches, 3 groundouts, and there it was. He had matched Don Drysdale, who was actually in the booth calling the game. And it set up perfect, as Hershiser now had a chance to go out there and break the record without an asterisk. But he actually didn't want to go out there. He said, "I really didn't want to break it. I wanted to stop at 58. I wanted me and Don to be together at the top. But the higher sources told me they weren't taking me out of the game. So I figured, what the heck? I might as well get the guy out." Sources also say it was Drysdale who actually convinced him to go out there for the 10th, saying he would have kicked him in the rear end if he knew he didn't want to go out there. And he would go out there, and basically everyone in the dugout made sure he did. And it would start with a strikeout. The problem being that the ball got past Mike Scioscia, so that put a runner on to start the inning. And he would then be bunted to second, then a ground out put him on third. And that tied the official record, with the runner 90 feet away from ending the streak and the game. They opted to walk Gary Templeton to bring up the pitcher spot, and he went to second on an interference call. And with 2 strikes on pinch hitter Keith Moreland, Hershiser would get him to fly out. And he had officially done it. 59 straight innings without a run, not having to worry about carrying it into the next season, as by some miracle, he was able to pitch 10 innings in his last start. He stood with his hands on his knees for a second after the flyout. Then he went to the dugout, where he was congratulated by his teammates and by Don Drysdale, who came down from the booth to personally congratulate him on breaking his record and for an interview. That game actually ended up lasting 16 innings, and because of that, he did not break Drysdale's record of 6 consecutive shutouts. Not that it really mattered. And what is sometimes forgotten is that his streak really lasted longer if you include the postseason, as in Game 1 of the NLCS, in which the Mets were the favorites. Hershiser outdueled Doc Gooden, as for the first 8 innings, he would shut out the Mets, which put the scoreless streak at 67 innings if you include the playoffs. And after a leadoff single in the 9th, followed by a groundout, it went to 67.1. Hanging on to a 2-run lead, Dale Strawberry would then hit a double off Hershiser, which would bring in a run, the first run scored on him since August 30th. And that would end his night as Jay Howell came into the game, and with 2 outs and 2 on, Hershiser would get charged with a second earned run when Gary Carter hit a 2-run double, which would be the difference in the game as the Mets won 3-2. The Dodgers won Game 2, and after a rain delay, he pitched Game 3 on 3 days rest, where he would pitch 7 innings with 1 earned run. Leaving with the game tied, the Mets would blow the game open the next inning. And the next night, Hershiser went back to his roots as he actually recorded the final out of Game 4 to pick up a postseason save. Then in Game 7, he would throw a complete game shutout to give the Dodgers the pennant and win NLCS MVP. Then in the World Series, after Kirk Gibson's historic walk-off in Game 1, Hershiser threw another complete game shutout with all the momentum towards the Dodgers, and 4 days later, he would again go 9 innings. Not a shutout, but he threw the last pitch of the World Series in Game 5 to give the Dodgers their 6th World Series, as he took home MVP honors. So a quick recap of his 2-month stretch: he didn't give up a run in the final 59 innings he pitched in the regular season, which was the main reason he unanimously won the Cy Young Award. Then he became the 3rd player to win LCS and World Series MVP honors, so it was a pretty good run. And no matter what, the scoreless inning streak was still alive going into the next season, and his first start would be against the Reds. And he said that the streak did not matter to him, as in his mind, it was already over. And ultimately, it was over in the first inning, when Todd Bessinger drove in Barry Larkin to officially put an end to the streak. With the fractional innings later being changed, the record currently stands at 59 straight scoreless innings, one of baseball and sports' greatest records that will be very hard to top. A streak up there with Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak, with few who have gotten close in the years after. The closest in the 25 years after, coming from Greg Maddux and Kenny Rogers, who both pitched 39 scoreless innings, and Brandon Webb, who threw 42 scoreless innings in 2007. And past that, there's Clayton Kershaw threw 41 in 2014, and the next year, Zach Greinke threw 45.2 scoreless innings, which is still the closest since, with Zach Gallen reaching 44.1 in 2022. A record that seemed increasingly hard to beat in the modern day, with the pitcher having to extend the streak over possibly 9 starts. Gallen's 44.1 scoreless innings lasting over 6 starts, while Drysdale and Hershiser pitched 58 and 59 in 6 games over their streaks. Obviously just different eras, just like Joe DiMaggio's hit streak, with the biggest challenge in the years after still being 12 games away from tying. And assuming Zach Greinke will eventually make the Hall of Fame, of the 7 pitchers who threw more than 45 straight scoreless innings, only Hershiser and Jack Coombs did not make the Hall of Fame. Hershiser would have another great season in 1989 for his 3rd straight season where he finished in the top 4 Cy Young voting. But after that, the workload would catch up to him, as after just 4 starts in 1990, it was discovered that he had a torn labrum. And after a return which he described as a miracle, he really was never the same, never posting a WAR of 3 or more, aside from his first year in Cleveland, when he became the only player in MLB history to win NLCS and ALCS MVP, making 10 starts and throwing 78 innings in 88-95 postseasons with a 1.27 ERA. But regardless of how it ended, his stretch not just during the streak, but also at the end of the 80s, was about as good as you can get. 3 straight top 4 Cy Young finishes, winning one of those, setting one of the greatest records along the way with an NLCS and World Series MVP. And most notable for what later happened, in the last 3 seasons of the 80s, he led the league in innings pitched, throwing at least 256 innings after never before or again doing so. Tough for an undersized pitcher, but that was also the reason he got the nickname a Bulldog, which he very well lived up to. Coming out of college being drafted in the 17th round, there were doubts he would even make it to the majors, let alone become a Cy Young winner. But the skinny, lengthy Hershiser had a mentality like a Bob Gibson, who in the same year Don Drysdale set the original record, gave up 1 run over 71 innings. So 6 straight complete games is impressive enough, but to not give up 1 run following a rough patch in the season is one of the best feats by any player that may never be close to being topped. Unless a pitcher got to face the Padres at the end of the NLDS for 10 straight games. Hopefully you liked this video, and if so, please consider liking and subscribing for new videos every week. Thank you.